I'm your host, Tim Brigham, and you're watching Coffee is for Closers, where we look at the hottest real estate market trends and who are the top producers. Today, we're looking at Chicago. Now, looking at last year, inflation remained high and, well, interest rates kind of gave us a panic attack. But what's strange is luxury sales outperformed like never before in 22. How's that going to translate to 23? Stick around. I got a chance to sit down with Chicagoland's top performer. More on that in a minute. And now for the top producers in the Northwest Suburbs of Chicago. Coming in at number 5, Kim Alden with 86 transactions for the year. Number 4, Craig Fallico with 89. Taking the number 3 spot, John Morrison with 99 transactions. Number 2, Holly Connors with 126. And the number 1 spot, Maria Del Bacchio with a total of 139 transactions. Congratulations. Now taking a look at the Southwest Suburbs, we had a tie. Number 5 and number 4 belong to Patricia Wardlow and Linda Feinstein, both with 76 transactions. Number 3, Brian Bomba with a total of 87 transactions for 2022. The number 2 spot with Catherine Beer, 99 transactions. And the number 1 spot in the Southwest Suburbs for 2022 is Dawn McKenna with 137 total transactions. Congratulations. And coming into Chicago, who were the top producers for 2022? Starting with Jeff Lowe with 186 transactions. Number 4, Greg Pekarsky, 208 transactions. Coming in number 3, Ben Lawless with 219. And the number 2 spot belongs to Lee Marcus with 257. Top dog in Chicago for the year of 2022 belongs to Matt Laricy with an outstanding 511 transactions. I got a chance to sit down with Matt earlier and take a tour of his latest $5 million listing and pick his brain about what he thinks of the future of luxury real estate for 2023, but more importantly, his future outlook for what's about to happen next. Welcome to Coffee is for Closers. My name is Tim Brigham, and today with me is Matt Laricy, top producer in Chicago for 2023 and multiple years running. But for those of you that don't know you, Matt, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Matt Laricy. Thanks for having me. I drink a lot of coffee, so I'm going to have to close some deals to be able to get there. I'm a third generation agent. I've been licensed since 2006. This is pretty much all I've ever wanted to do with my entire life. I think since I was 2 or 3 years old, getting into real estate was always my passion. So that's kind of my background of who we are. And I have a team called the Laricy team. We're located out of River North. Most of us are family or known through somebody in some way. And, you know, we're just kind of a little boutique group that's trying to make some waves in this big industry.
Well, you're making huge waves. You're doing a great job. I mean, it's pretty incredible the how quickly you have grown this team, but you've done it in an intelligent fashion. I mean, you've been very selective with who you've added to your team, but they've all been very successful under your leadership.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people say quickly, it makes it sound like it's quick, but in reality, I mean, I got in 06. So in 06, 07, and 08, so my first 3 years, I didn't make any money. I think in my first 4 years total, I made $17,000 total in 4 years. So everybody looks at us now and like, well, I feel like you made it really successful really quickly. And I hear this all the time. I'm like, well, I mean, I got in the business when I was 21 years old, right? It's like I didn't really start to see success. I was like 25 or 26. We're talking like seeing success, like doing like $5 million a year, okay? Which in my opinion is not successful, but like at least starting to like not like be in complete credit card debt. I mean, I lived at my parents' house. I was 27. Okay, so that means my first 6 years in the business, I lived at home without any money. I didn't have a girlfriend, okay? Nobody wanted, I mean, this is the Great Recession, so I'm not making any money. I'm living at home and like I'm selling real estate. Like, how hot is that to chicks, right? So, you know, I think people only see like the Matt Laricy today, you know, in my 30s when we started to do really well, but like they don't see the good 7 or 8 years before it. And today's real estate agents who get in the business, the market's, you know, doing amazing, right? And they're like, oh, I can't believe I made less than 100 GCI a year, and they're crying and complaining. It's like, fuck, man, like you don't even know what it's like to grind. So, I mean, I always find it interesting when people are like, you know, you made it quick. It's like the reality is, I mean, you know, it's, you know, we're going on almost 20 years license at this point.
It's incredible. I mean, that's the whole point of this show, right?
Yeah.
We saw, I was in a bar one time and I was listening to 2 agents argue, right? And they were both right, but on 2 completely different sides of the fence.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you're talking about, is that it's that grinding passion that you have for this industry, that you grind it out to get to where you need to be, but really being a master of your craft.
Yeah.
I think you've created some incredible systems to get you where you are today. I mean, talk to me about your team and how you run your team.
Yeah, I mean, so like, you know, when I first decided to start a team, I realized I was like super busy, and I physically just could not handle all the business. Remember, I closed a little over 54 deals by myself without any assistance, any help or anything like that. And I was like, I'm gonna need some help if I want to take this to the next level the next year. And I think the problem is right now is everybody who gets a real estate license, they do like 2 sales, and we sell downtown Chicago mostly, like in downtown markets, say, you know, like Lincoln Park, Lakeview, including stuff like that. And you have a lot of kids who grew up very rich, and they naturally will get 2 quick sales because, like, you know, their mom's cousins got to buy off them. They're buying a $5 million place downtown, so like, you know, they do $9 million their first year, and the 2 sales are like their, you know, their best friend's aunt or something like that, you know. And they're like, well, I'm gonna start a team, right? I'm busy. Right? And like,
well, first comes the Instagram post of being $1 million listing,
getting out of a Lambo, getting into that place, and I get it. Like, you want to fake it till you make it type stuff, and I'm not hating on any of that stuff because I think everybody should be able to try to find the way. But what I do hate on is the fact is that like everybody has to claim that they're like the most successful right off the bat. Like I remember when I was starting, like I would brag that I was not successful. Like I would go on listing appointments and people would be like, why am I going to hire you over like a Jenny Ames or a Mario Greco? You know, like those were the top agents, and they're still top agents. When I was coming up, and I'd be like, I'll sleep in your bed to sell this place. I'm like, I'm living at my parents' house. I'm like, nobody wants this more than I want it. I'm like, how bad do they want it?
That's
you know,
great.
and I was like, and they're like, well, how many sales do you have? And I would say right to the face, I was like, I have 0 sales in this building. I've never sold a condo in River North in my life. But guess what? Everybody's got to start somewhere. You give me the one that gives me the start, because I'll tell you right now, I'll sleep outside. I'll do whatever it takes to win. I'm like, are the other people willing to do that? So like, I didn't have to try to fake to act who I was. I owned who I was. I was a kid on the south side that wasn't as cultured or didn't know as much about the business as everybody else did, but I was willing to work for it. And when I finally got to a certain point where I felt like, hey, I couldn't handle this business anymore, I was like, I'm gonna need to take somebody on. My first hire was my wife. At the time, she was just my girlfriend. She was teaching 3rd grade at the time. Maybe it was 5th grade. She'll kill me for this. I should know this. It's one of the grades. It's elementary school. And she was like, hey, realtors are like barbarians. Nobody's organized, right? Everybody's super disorganized.
Right.
So she created the system. She's like, hey, listen, like you can't bring a system that nobody's going to know, right? Like people are idiots. Like iPhone 1, because like a kid can pick it up and use it. So she's like, we're going to base everything off Google. It's very easy. It's very simple. And she's like, we're going to color code stuff. When you color code stuff, we're visual learners. It'll make people be able to adapt and learn it really quickly. So she built our systems. She was my first assistant. So she was setting up appointments in between periods. Okay.
So I want to stop here. So you're telling me your wife, you didn't hire another company, you didn't jump into any of this. Your wife built your entire system off Google. That's incredible.
She did, yeah. And then we worked together of what would work and what wouldn't work. And she started taking, like the appointments on our listings and things of that nature. And it was a lot of trial and error. Like, I'm not perfect. There was a lot of stuff we thought would work that blew up in our faces, and people like yelled at us or fired us about it. And there's a lot of stuff. And the other thing is like, I'm not like, I think a lot of people think I'm like super egotistical, which I'm not saying I'm like, I don't like, of course I'm like got a little bit of ego because I'm successful, and every person is going to have that. But I'm also like not too big of a person to like take constructive criticism or ask what I could do better. Right. So in those first years, we'd be like, hey, just out of curiosity, like, do you like this system, to our clients? Like, would you like us to change anything? And after the fact, we would also follow up and be like, hey, listen, what did we do right? But also, more importantly, what can we do to improve on? And I think a lot of our customers saw that I really cared about being the best. I don't think there's anybody who's ever met me in my life that didn't at least know that, like, as fucked up and crazy as I am, they're like, there's something about this guy that's just like kind of like on this path, right?
Sure.
And people would tell us, and they'd be like, hey, and they wanted to help. That was the best part. They'd be like, hey, listen, like, I thought you did this awesome, but like, what if you did this? And I think this would be cool if this happened. I'd be like, totally. And instead of like what most people do, right, when they start to get a little taste of success, like, oh, I could do everything, and I don't want to hear that. We're like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like, let's try to, warp the inner system. So she was my first hire to help us do that. And then I hired my older brother to help do some like odd jobs, like put up lock boxes and things of that nature. My brother was a bad kid. Like he was older, but like he has a little bit of a drinking problem. And so I had to fire him. And people think like, oh, do we not have a good relationship? No, I mean, it's fine. Listen, the guy, he didn't want to do real estate, like he just was like, I can make a couple bucks working with Matt, and didn't work. So we let him go. And then I took on my first 2 hires as salespeople. And we would work at my condo at Larrabee, out of my condo, while we tried to build a company. And then I took on my first assistant, and then I didn't let my wife go, but like my wife just didn't want to do it. She
So what year was this that you were in?
So 2013 is when I started the team.
Okay.
So think about that. Like I started in 06, I didn't start a team until 13.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I didn't move downtown until 2011. So in 2006, I was living at home with my parents. I didn't move out till 2011.
And you're starting in 06, so you're going through 08.
Yeah.
And then you're going into 13, right?
Yeah.
Which that's a big testament to who you are, because not a lot of people survived.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I always said to everybody, like during the Great Recession, that like I won't get rich in money, but I'll get rich in knowledge. And I never understood in real estate that like there's really no, I mean, you could, nowadays you have podcasts and books and all this other shit, you can, do whatever. But like when we were coming up, I mean, you had books. There was no, I mean, audiobooks were weird, but they're not like podcasts today and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So like I would try to read the books, but they're all bullshit. Like I don't need some guy that's never really sold anything to tell me what to do. Right. I'm a trial and error guy. I'm like a hands-on. So those, few years that were terrible, I mean, I didn't have any business anyways. Like I got in at the end in December of 06 when I got in. So 07 was like really my first year. So it was like, okay, I'm trying to figure it out. And then market blew up, and I sold on the south side of Chicago to start. They already got crushed. I mean, you had 3 flats that were going for 800,000, going for, 150,000. That's not a joke. Yeah. So it's like, that's, so yeah, we were trying to figure it out, and I had a will. I figured if somebody else can make it, so can I. So we were able to make it through it. But again, I didn't start my team 2013. So when we see these kids today starting these teams day one, it's like the biggest problem I have and biggest advice I give to other people is like, how can you start a team and be the leader when you don't even know the answers, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many of these bigger agents that I talk with, and they don't like, they'll send me an offer for $550 with $5,000 back, and I'd be like, you're okay, so you got a $545 offer. It's just like, no, I offer $550. I'm like, well, you got $5,000 on closing costs, so like it means it's $545. Right. And like, what are you talking about? It's $550, and they're screaming at me. I'm like, all right, listen, dude. Now I'm gonna be an asshole because like you're trying to talk down to me. I'm like, listen, like, there's $5,000. Where's it coming from? Like, are we shaking trees and this money's falling out? Like, it comes from my seller. They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, so if my seller's giving you $5,000 and then you offer me $550, the price is $545, right? So if I'm explaining this and this guy's got a team of 15 people, right, how dumb are the people underneath him? I know it sounds bad, but it's like you're gonna take on the stuff. So I think when people form these teams, and when we decided to form a team, my biggest thing was like, I gotta make sure that I know what I'm doing in and out, that I can answer every question on the business before I ever think about having somebody work for me, because I don't want them to look stupid. Right. But also, anybody that I take on my team is a Navy SEAL. Like, I'm not looking to take on an Army guy. I'm not looking to take on like a Marine. So a specialist. You're looking Correct. For people who are very specific in their trade. The right? best of the best. I want nothing less. And like, I'm not a more or I think a lot of people now brag. That's the other big thing is people are like, I got 50 people on my team. It's like, and people are like, oh, that's awesome. Like, you got 50 people on your team doing like 40 million. Like, what the fuck? It's like embarrassing, And it's usually, 1% of the 2% of the team that's actually doing something. Right. So like, I don't need a bunch of people who are going to do nothing and just maybe cause me more headaches or more importantly, ruin my reputation. Because ultimately every single person you have working for you is a reflection of who you are as a person. So when we hired people, when I decided to take on team members, that was really important to me, is making sure that 1, they had the same work ethics as I did. 2, that they fit the culture, like who we are. Like nobody on my team, we don't like not get along. Like everybody gets along extremely well. So it does take longer to find somebody that has a work ethic, first off, which is like almost impossible to find in today's day and age. And the second thing is like somebody I gotta like them. Like I tell people like right now I'm hiring marketing people. I'm like, people are like, why didn't you hire me? I'm like, honestly, I just didn't like you. I'm like, I don't mean that in a rude way. I got to be around you fucking 10 hours a day. Like, I don't like you.
There's a certain freedom there, right? Where you can actually just tell somebody like, look, I have nothing against you. It's just, I don't want to spend every single hour with you and I don't see us getting along.
Yeah.
I want you to know this, right? I've watched your videos and I've watched the social stuff that you do. And in comparison, some of the people out there, you watch their videos and you see their things and then you meet them in person and they're two different people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You are not that. When you do a deal, when you're in business, when you're everything that you see, that is really you.
Authenticity. Yeah.
Right. How important is that to you?
I think one of the main reasons I got to where I got is that I'm not so full of shit. Like I always tell people, like when I go on one of the main reasons I lose a listing appointment, if I lose, which is rare, but if I do lose, it's because like a price is one of the main things. Every now and then there's a personality conflict. They're like, this guy's a fucking weirdo, right? Which is cool. I am. But they're like, I think my place is worth $1 million, right? And like I had 2 agents tell me it's worth $1 million. I'm like, listen, like I'm a numbers guy. Like there's not a single number that says you're worth more than 900,000. And they're like, well, why they say it's $1 million? I'm like, listen, I'm in sales. I know exactly how you want me to act, what you want me to say, how you want me to talk to get your business. I get your business, right? And then 3 months later, all I'm doing for those 3 months is just talking about price cuts and I turn into this different person and blah, blah, blah. Like what you get is what you see. Right. I'm not trying to act like I'm not, somebody else. I'm not going to bullshit you to try to get your business. And in today's day and age, I think a large part because of social media and because people want social acceptance is everybody's so full of shit.
I think everybody thinks they have to be the realtor, the cliche realtor from American Beauty, right? The movie where I'm going to sell this house today, right? It's craziness.
Yeah.
I think that there's some real honest clarity here that if you're genuine and you're authentic, you'll attract more people and maybe you might lose some along the way, but you're proof that, that you'll gain more than you'll lose, right?
Yeah. I mean, 100%, we talk all the time. Like there's 10% of people, no matter what, like, we just know, like, you just know when somebody doesn't like you. It's pretty quick. Yeah. It happens. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of times with those 10% that don't like me right off the bat that I win them over. Cause I call it out. Like you could tell when somebody doesn't like you. You know what I mean? You sit down with them, just the energy's not there.
Yeah.
They just got that look to you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it is. I just feel it. I say it to them. I said, listen, like, I get it. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I get it. They're like, what do you get? We're not even talking. I'm like, you don't like me. I'm like, you don't like me, but I'm the best person for your job. Like, you don't have to like me. I'm gonna sell the place. Like, you may not like my personality. Right. I'm like, you'll like this person's personality on my team. So you can talk to them most of the time. I'll be in the back selling your place. Like, how's that sound for you? Does that work at least? Honestly, 50% of the time I'll get the listing still. A lot of times they're like, it's just, no, not gonna work out. It could be maybe cringeworthy, embarrassing, but like, I am not one to try. You know what I mean? Like, I'll get everything I can. And I think, being authentic and trying as hard as you can to try to win in this business is two things that people just don't do anymore.
What do you think you see the biggest mistake agents make? There's going to be agents watching this, and for our audience, they're looking for your knowledge on how they can improve.
I mean, there's a lot that I see that's wrong. One is education. Knowledge is power, right? Like, people don't know the business. So it drives me literally. For any agent out here that doesn't like me, it's probably because I like lit them up, right? Because like people like walk around and they act this way, that this entitlement, and then they talk down to you, and it's like, listen, I'll get talked down to by you once. I'll let you talk down to me twice. The third time, like, I'm gonna show you nobody can argue better than me. I really feel that I can argue better than anybody, and I have zero fucks about going for the jugular when you fuck with me more than twice. And one of the big things I see is this power of entitlement, and they have no knowledge in the business. So people, and I have it right now. I have people like, well, the market's failing, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, if the market's not failing, you don't even know what the hell's going on. How many months of inventory is in this location? How many units have you sold? Right. We had everybody in December. Right now it's January, end of January. I don't know when this will be released, but it's end of January. And if anybody's ever saw any of my podcasts, I've been talking for the last 3 months I said, wait until January, February, the market takes off like a rocket ship, and every asshole realtor out there is gonna be telling me like, can you believe how hot the market is? I can't believe how hot it is. It's so crazy. And I'm like, I fucking told you it was gonna be unbelievably hot. This isn't rocket science. The same cycles happen every year. We're the most rent-heavy city in the country. Everybody's leases come due March, April, May, first part of June. People come back from holiday, they wanna buy. So demand goes crazy and there's no inventory. Happens every year, right? And every December, every agent's been telling me, it's a different market, Matt. And the market's not coming back next year. It's not. And they're screaming at me, telling me I'm a fucking moron. And then I see that same asshole in January, like, are you busy? Can you believe how busy it is? It's busy, right? It's like, you were the asshole telling me the market was going to come back.
And what they're doing is they're showing their experience, right? I mean, typically that's an agent that, in my experience, doesn't have the 06 start. They haven't seen these cycles that continue to repeat themselves. You've called it every single time.
But it doesn't matter if you have the experience or not. Don't project like you know what you're talking about and then try to belittle somebody with this entitlement bullshit to say it. So when I talk to newer agents, it's always the agents who it's at like $4 to $10 million hitter. You know what I mean? Because a lot of the times the brand new ones, and I appreciate this. If you don't know what you're doing, like I remember there's a few agents that I know very well that when I was first starting, I didn't know. And I would ask them, be like, listen, you're right. This is my first transaction in this area. I was not familiar with that. I'm apologetic about it. If you could tell me what I did wrong and what I should know, I would be appreciative, right? You're not gonna know everything from day one. Why is it so bad to admit that you don't know something?
Right.
That's the thing I don't get. So that's what I'm talking about, the knowledge. But the problem is that $4 to $10 million hitters want to flex their muscles. Made maybe $100,000, first time they ever tasted a couple bucks, and they want to act like an asshole and come at you. It's like, listen, like, we're in this together. Like, just, I'll close a deal for you. Just, ease up a little bit. Don't be screaming at me over this bullshit or trying to tell me what to do with my job. And then that's why I become asshole Matt,
Right.
And then the second thing is just like the other big thing I would tell people that needs to learn the business is follow up. I will say that nobody under 35 understands how to follow up. The minute I'm done with an appointment, whether it's a buyer or seller, the first thing I do is send a thank you follow-up email, immediately recapping my conversation. Super important to recap that conversation, right? How many times have you told the borrower, like, hey, if you put down 20% and you pay off that car debt, you'll be able to get the loan, right? But you're really busy because you just got a phone call now and you forgot how much money I did. I took it down, but I think I remember. And then he calls you up next day later and he goes, you said I could get away with 10% if I paid off that car debt, right? You said 10%. You're like, no, I said 20%. Now it's a he said, she said game, right? Mm-hmm. I recap, and I love doing this with sellers because I follow up immediately with our conversation. You're moving to New York, your time frame's this long, here's the price point we discussed, here's my commission, and here's what I need to list your property with my full questions, right? I do this for one for my own recommendation or remembrance, right, of understanding what happened, but two, so a month from now, if something happens, like, well, you said this, because this happens 50% of the time when people are following, like, if the place doesn't sell. 50% of the time they come back and say, well, we listed at 500 under your recommendation, and now we're sitting. I was like, oh, well, here's a screenshot of the email where I said that we need to be listed at 450. You said 500, because I recapped the email. If they said something different, I'm like, you said 500. I said that if you list at 500, we're gonna sit and get stale, and we're gonna sell for less than my recommended price. I'm like, so here's the email where I said that. Just
super smart. Super smart.
And I'm not shoving in their face like, fuck you. I'm shoving in their face being like, told you so, in a polite way.
You're really telling them you should still trust me, right? I'm showing you that we had a plan. Right. I still respected you enough to do yours, and look what happened.
The reason I probably don't get fired as much as probably the average realtor is probably because, like, to show that I'm right, I have proof of why I'm right, And I send 2 emails a week to every seller I have, recapping everything. So again, if anything ever happens, I'm like, here's the documented
track
proof
record.
of everything I've ever sent you, But the reason why I call follow-up in particular is, like, these are just examples of follow-up. I can't tell you how many agents that I talk to people, like, I don't ever ask, why did you choose, like, who did I go against? I'm just like, is there any reason in particular why you chose us for somebody else? Like, honestly, I didn't hear back from the other 2 people. Like, there's no follow-up.
Wow.
Or like, I've been trying to get a hold of a person. I will tell you, there's been numerous times where I wasn't the person they were going to pick, buyer or seller. And they're like, we reached out to them like 4 or 5 times. It's like, we haven't heard back from them. You're blowing me up. Every day, I spend 2 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week. If I'm on vacation, if I'm, well, I never take days off for being sick, but whatever. No matter how busy I am, 2 hours a day, I follow up with everybody, every day. Okay.
So if you're an agent and you're listening to this, listen to what he just said. He's eating off your plate because you're not calling your client back. Right. Call your client back.
Right.
No, we preach this within my team too, is
Right.
that you have to follow up. I think it's the biggest mistake that most salespeople make is they have an initial call and they assume something,
right.
and then they get busy with something else. So before we get into predictions, you said something that I would love to expand on. I see your videos that you post of your no days off.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Is that real? Like, do you really not take days off?
I took 16 days off total last year. And 2 of the days, which I think are bullshit, because I had a kid and I gave myself a full day off, but we went to the hospital at like 1:55 and the kid came out by, I think he was born 2:30 or 2:32 or something like that. And by like 3 o'clock, I was back in the Northwestern Lounge working till like 9 o'clock. Okay.
Wow.
But what do you, I always, when people are like, well, you had a kid, but it's like, the reality is kid comes out, they wrap him up and then they take him, so that whatever, they do all the shit they got to do to him.
Yep,
your wife is beat to shit, right? They're like, I don't know about you, but my wife's like, listen, get the fuck out of here. Like, I don't want to see anybody. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I just pushed this thing out of my body. You're in a room like this. This is what you're doing. You're sitting in this room on this uncomfortable bed. So so I was like, okay, got my computer. I went in the lounge. Actually, I got her car. I went to my condo, got my computer, went back to the hospital, and I just went in the lounge and worked. But that was one of the days off. The second day off was the next day in the hospital where I worked in the lounge the whole time. So like, my point is like, there was never a single day while I was in Chicago not working an entire day. Wow. I took 4 days off. I do every year. I go to Napa. I did a 3-day trip to Florida with the kids. Again, I don't know if I'd call that vacation when you travel with 2 kids and a pregnant wife at that time. And the other times was Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter. It was like major holidays.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, I will never take a day off. I frown upon it. In fact, you get belittled in my office big time.
So I was going to say that there's a little, you're like, it's bullshit. Because it sounds like it got brought up in a meeting like, well, this day counts as a day off.
100%.
You were gone for a little bit.
100%. So like, because like, so I was like, they're like, you're getting a full day for that 2 o'clock. I'm like, well, it was a Sunday and days off started at 4. And like, well, it just became the big thing. I'm like, just put a full day down. Day down. But like my assistant's going to Florida this weekend. I'm like, who the fuck told you could go to Florida? You know what I mean? Like you are publicly shamed when you take a day off. And people nowadays, I get it. Somebody out there's gonna be like, it's about balance. You're not doing it right. Get the fuck out. Balance is such a millennial word. It's such a bullshit word of what people tell themselves because they don't have the energy or drive and they burn out. I don't burn out. I never felt burnt out. I don't feel like I'm not waking up every day like a man on a mission. Okay. Like I want to work. I will take your lunch because you don't want to do it. But this whole thing of that I could be successful by working less is all bullshit. I don't care what anybody says. I can give you a million examples. I'm not going to call any agents out, but there's a lot of you guys out there that took your foot off the gas and you thought like, hey, I could build a team, take a step back and like find more of me time. It's like, that's great. I'm not telling you shouldn't have balance if that's what you want, but don't tell me you want to be number one and have balance. Because if you want to be number one or come up to the top, you're going to have to take down somebody like myself and I won't take the foot off the gas.
That's incredible. It's incredible. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears, right? Mm-hmm. We're doing a recap for, last year. What are your predictions? Well, first off, how did you live last year? What was your total volume?
We finished at 289 and some change million closed and roughly about 20 million pending. Wow. So we finished around, I'd have to look, it was about 550 deals closed and like, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 pending going into this year. So roughly almost 600 places closed or under contract last year. So it was our best year ever. We were on pace to just fucking, I think at one point we were on pace for like 450 million. Wow. And then that summer shift happened, which happens every year. And it caught me a little bit by surprise that the biggest shift that had happened, but we did expect it to happen. Even though you anticipate it to happen, when it happens, you're still like, fuck,
Yeah.
So
what are you seeing for this year? What do you see happening in the markets? Let's start with Chicago.
So this is gonna make me sound like a total douche, but I mean, I have predicted this market to the T of everything that was gonna happen. I said this year was gonna start off like a rocket ship. It has, okay? You have a few reasons why. The first time buyers so I work in the downtown markets, okay? So like, if you're in the suburbs, you're probably noticing a bigger difference. But where we work, my prediction for this year was back to office, right? People are going back to work. Not for working in your underwear and making $150,000 a year doing nothing. So we're seeing more and more people come back downtown. And because rents are higher, and because there's a lot of people relocating that naturally just like to own and work, the market's doing very, very well right now. We're gonna have an unbelievable first 4 to 5 months. So at the end of April, once May hits, you're gonna notice the market's gonna kind of shift a little bit. You're gonna start hearing people being like, a little bit of a slowdown. June, the summer shift's gonna hit, and it's gonna hit pretty hard. June, July, and August are gonna be tough months. They're not gonna be terrible months, but the people who didn't prepare for it are gonna be hurting. If you got a buyer right now, it's like, I wanna feel like I win on a deal, June, July, and August, okay? Now, from September till December is gonna be the one to watch. Okay. How bad is it gonna be, right? And that is something that nobody can technically predict, because like, does the stock market crash? Like they say maybe it has another 10 to 20% to go, right? Maybe it doesn't go at all. I can't speak like a Ken Griffin on the stock market. I could speak like it on the real estate market, but on the stock market I can't. That's the unknown that we don't know what could happen, right? Yeah. If it drops really badly in the summertime, or something happens with that, how bad does that make our fall and early winter, right? So I think the fall and early winter is going to be a bloodbath. It's like, how big of a bloodbath will it be? I don't know. This past end of third and fourth quarter, we called it in the beginning of January. We said it would be an effing bloodbath. I knew it was going to be terrible. I knew the rates were going to get weird and it was going to make everybody kind of panic. And that's what happened. I don't know if it could get worse than the last end of the third quarter, fourth quarter was this year, but I'm anticipating something similar. I think it's gonna be really, really, really bad. So you got to prepare for it.
It's interesting. Some of these economists in the mortgage world are calling for, an adjustment to when inflation comes back down, we'll see rates come and follow.
Rates will drop, but here's the thing: is like it doesn't. I don't think rates will probably, it could, but I don't anticipate rates going back to like the mid 7s. I think we'll probably hover around wherever we're at right now. Maybe go down. Maybe even say we go down a point. It doesn't matter if the economy takes a hit and the layoffs begin, that's when you're gonna have problems. I think we're in store for huge mass layoffs. I think the layoffs are coming. I've been saying this for too long. People have been making too much money doing nothing. When then Ape was eating pizza and people spent $2 million on digital art, that's when I knew something was fucked up. It was like in 06. You're like, that's sold for what? That's sold for what? That doesn't make any sense. And then the bubble burst and it was like, how did that happen, right? Well, I was like, this is the same thing we're seeing in 06. I'm like, when you got 24-year-old kids spending $2 million in digital art, that's when you know there's too much money going around. That's when you know that everybody's just too comfortable. And that's why this working from home bullshit, I don't care what everybody says out there that's watching this, it ain't real life. You can't make $200,000 a year working from home, taking a second job, not working. You're gonna go back to work. And companies that are taking all these losses in the stock market, they can only take losses for so long to like, what's my biggest expense? What's the company's biggest expense? Employees. Okay, come back to work. You don't want to come back to work? See you later. And you know what? Whether you like Elon Musk or not, I've been saying it's going to take one celebrity boss to start letting people go to watch the other people start to follow. And all these people that are big employees, like, I hate them, whatever. And now, you know what they're seeing is like, that guy cut 3/4 of his staff. His company's still operating. Whether it's doing good or bad, it's debatable. Okay. But at the end of the day, they're like, the program itself's not working. It's a big reason why I fired a lot of my marketing staff myself too. I was like, I don't know, why am I paying all this money and people are telling me they're busy and we're not busy at all? I'll give you an example why I think this working from home bullshit. I have a first-hand experience as a business owner that writes the checks. I don't have an investor. I don't have mom and dad funding my company. It's whatever I make, I could pay. So here I am paying these people money and people are bitching to me in the fourth quarter of how busy they are. And I kept looking around like, man, this is the lowest amount of sales I've ever had. This is the lowest amount of listings I've ever had. This is the slowest. This was slower than we were during the height of the lockdown. I'm like, so how are you so busy? What are you doing, right? But they're at home. I don't know what they're doing. And employees, big bosses, they're looking at it the same way I'm looking at it. And they're saying like, this doesn't make sense. And they're bringing these people back. So the layoffs is why I think the market can be tough, because if there's more and more people getting laid off, that's like spreads like wildfire. Well, my friend just got laid off. I'm a little bit nervous to buy. My other friend just got laid off. I'm a little bit nervous to buy. Like, is the market come back? Rates could be 2% for all you care. You could pitch the lowest rates you want, but if people are nervous that they can't pay their bills, they're not going to be buying. And then a lot of the first-time buyers are going to be going, hey, mom and dad, like I'm thinking about buying my first place. The mom and dad are going to be like, listen, you need to be conservative with your cash right now. Like, this is a tough economy. You better save it, you rent, or you move back home. And that's why the market's going to be tough.
So that's interesting. So Forbes reports that, the rental has increased to the highest levels we've seen. I mean, the average in Chicago, it came out in 1925. I mean, that's pretty intense. Talk to me about rental. What are you seeing with rental markets?
So again, the rental market's been extremely predictable, right? So in October of 2020, Cranes published an article saying that renters are king. So you could Google it to still not show bullshit. They're literally paying people vacations to rent. And this is when the media was pumping up that cities would never exist again, right? Wall Street Journal, in fact, published an article saying stick a fork in Manhattan was done. In fact, I called them up, offered them $1 million cash, said, I'll bet $1 million against your $1 million that New York will exist again, okay? Of course, they told me to F off, etc. Wall Street Journal, you ever watch this? Look who's right. This is why you don't listen to some of this fear-mongering bullshit, right?
Yeah.
The reality is they said nobody would ever rent again. Well, that's because nobody was living in cities. And then guess what happened? People were like, hey, I don't like eating at Applebee's anymore. I'm sick of it. I want to come back around people. And a lot of people who move back to these big cities, they're like, I'm a little bit nervous about are we going to really live in the city? So I'm going to rent. Oh, I'm a little bit nervous. Maybe this hybrid won't be hybrid and I'll get locked back down. Maybe the crime is really bad, right? And I want to kind of rent. Maybe the economy will take a hit and I want to rent. All these things add up. What people understand is there's a million things that happen that dictate why the market goes where it goes. That's why I can predict it as I look at all these different things. So all this stuff adds up to why rental prices kept going up and 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 up. And now the media is telling you hey, we think the rent's gonna come down. I don't fucking buy it. I don't buy it at all. I think rents are gonna go up again. Because
Really? Wow.
When you have a volatile economy like we have, when you have a volatile stock market like you have, and you have a workplace that people are unsure of, am I gonna have a job? Am I gonna go back to office or am I not? There's gonna be a lot less people who are gonna probably take the chance of buying. And we're getting a lot of people relocating to Chicago for work. 90% of my buyers that I've talked to in the last 3 weeks are people relocating to go back to the office. These were these idiots that decided to move to these states that you've never heard of, like Utah, Idaho, North Dakota, places that people didn't know exist. And now they're like, shit, I gotta come back here. Yeah. And those people are like, I don't know if I wanna buy because I've never been to Chicago before.
Right.
So how are rents gonna go down? Typically speaking, when you have a tough economy, rents go up. Now rents went up a lot, again, considering the fact that these guys have thrown this article and said, well, now they're gonna have to go down. It's like, well, we were at an all-time low for rentals of demand. Now we're an all-time high. What's gonna make that high go down? Why is there gonna be less renters this year?
Well, that means the only thing that I would think that would cause that to happen is if people started to leave. But to your point, it looks like the demand is here and that it'll just going to continue and get worse.
But now I didn't go to Stanford or Harvard. I went to Eastern Illinois. Okay, I call it the Harvard of the Midwest. Okay, I got like C's and D's in college. Okay, so I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm just listening to what the experts at Stanford told me, the Ivy League snobs, right? The guys that are the smartest of the smart. They came up with the rule, not me. They came up with the rule called supply and demand. I didn't come up with this. They did.
Right.
So if the supply is low and the demand continues to go up, according to their theories, the Ivy League theories, not the Matt Laricy D's in college theories, the Ivy League theories, that technically speaking, the rent should go up. So why is Forbes and all these other magazines telling you that they're gonna go down? What data are they using to back that proof up? Because I'm looking at the market and seeing all the reasons why the rent should go up. Now, I could be wrong. It's possible. But with taxes and taxes going up in Chicago and cost of inflation going up and the cost of employment going up, to employ door people at your place and staff at your place, and everything's going up and the demand's going up, why are the prices going to drop? What scientific data do you have to prove to me that the rents are going to drop, Mr. Forbes? Right?
Yeah, I don't see.
I'm not saying it at you or taking it on you. I'm just saying, this is why the market's predictable, is because people read this bullshit that these people put out that has absolutely no merit behind it. They read it, they regurgitate it to other people, and they act like they know what they're talking about. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like that Good Will Hunting when Matt Damon's like, yeah, fucking, like how those apples fucking, you know what I mean? It's like that scene. It's like there's intangibles people don't look at.
It's really interesting how people will take data and just interpret their own, opinion out of nowhere, right? And there's, it's the highest it's ever been, so it must have to come down from there, right?
Well, I tell people that's why I was compared to like war, right? I'm like General Patton. I'm on the front lines. He was one of the most feared generals in United States history. He was on the front lines with his troops. The guys back in the United States couldn't tell him what was happening with the Germans. He could. He was up front with his troops. He could tell you what the troops were feeling. He could tell you which way the wind was blowing. He could tell you what the enemy thought. The guy that's never been over to Germany before can't tell you what the German soldier thinks because he's never met one. He's read about him, okay? But when you're on the front lines, you could smell it, you could feel it, you could taste it, you know what's actually happening. So these guys that write these articles a lot of times, they're just guys this guy's probably never even been to Chicago. He has no idea what's happening. He just looked at a couple pieces of information, looked at his Ivy League degree, he was like, let's create this shit and see if it sticks.
Yeah, speaking of the people who like to put things out there and really just kind of spin it the way for their narrative, and a term that's been used pretty frequently as of late that I just love is this hibernating, buyer, right? Or housing is hibernating, right? Have you seen this, right? Where everybody's talking about how everybody's just kind of hanging out. What are you seeing in regards to people hanging back or maybe waiting for something in order to pull the trigger?
I gotta be honest with you, I don't even know what a hibernating buyer is.
Really?
Is that a buyer that's sitting back and kind of waiting?
Yeah, so I see this on the mortgage side. I see, a common objection will be, well, I want to get pre-approved. I want to get everything squared away, and I think I want to buy.
Yeah.
And on the mortgage side, I can do math.
Yeah.
You're the emotional side, right?
Yeah.
They get with a realtor and they're trying to figure out, is this the right strategy? Should I buy now or should I wait? Is there a lower price coming? So they're pre-approved, they're good, they're a solid borrower with a solid job, but they're either waiting for a crash, or they're waiting for a lower interest rate, or they're just waiting because they think there's something better coming.
Yeah,
right?
That's just a made-up buyer. So like at the end of the day, like that's not a new phenomenon. That's always around. So in my office, we have two words for them. First off, we call them a Texas two-step buyer. The buyers that want to tell people that they're buying, they bring a chick with them, they're trying to impress them. Like, yo, babe, you want to go to this $5 million penthouse? Yeah, here's my pre-approval. I could buy and the girl's like, whoo, man, this guy, he's cool, right? He could buy a $5 million property, huh? Like, but he's not a buyer. In my office, we always say, like, after we meet a first person, it's the biggest saying. Guy comes in the office, I'm like, yo, how'd that go? He goes, not a buyer.
Huh?
I'm like, not a buyer? He's not a buyer. I'm like, all right, let's give him a couple more times. You can tell certain questions you can ask, you'd feel it. Like, again, I think another reason why we're so successful, I can read people very well. I could just pick up on it. I know if you're a buyer or not a buyer. Those people aren't buyer. The people who are like, I wish I would have, right? I wish I would have bought Apple in the 80s. I wish I would have bought Tesla when it dropped. Now it dropped again. Well, why don't you buy Tesla? What if it goes down more, right? They're always, shoulda, woulda, couldas. Like, the reality is, like, either jump in or don't jump in. That's why I call them Texas two-step. They're in, they're out. They go under contract, they tell all their friends they're on contract, and then they pull it off, right? And then, like, we're always like me and my attorney are like, should we fight to save it? I'm like, well, we want it more than they want it. If you want it more than your client wants it, you know that they're not buyers, So, like, there's just some people who aren't buyers. And I'll tell it to people. I call it out. I'm like, listen, you're either a buyer or not a buyer.
Like, what do you say to somebody right now? And I think you're pretty candid with your clients, right?
Yeah.
If they're apprehensive in the market conditions, should I buy a house right now or should I wait? Or,
I think it depends on where you're buying. Am I buying in Florida, Miami? I'd probably wait. I mean, I don't know the market well enough down there, but I mean, what the amount of growth that's gone on down there is unstable. I know everybody's telling me everybody's gonna move to Florida and it's great and blah, 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 but they said that in 06 too. And I remember people selling $5 million penthouses for $900,000. So I don't know. I think there's certain parts of the market that I'm not educated enough on to tell you whether or not you should buy because I don't sell down there. But if you're looking to buy in my markets, I don't think there's ever a better time to buy than the day it is, like unless our property values went down in most sectors of the market last year. Okay. So if the market's down, like, what do I care? What if they drop 5% more, right? What if? Okay, but if rents are an all-time high, like, what do you really get for it? Yeah. All you're doing, I mean, I don't know a huge portfolio of real estate. All you're doing is renting off an asshole landlord like me, paying my bills. I'm getting rich off it to do absolutely nothing because you're too afraid to pull the trigger. So which one do you want to be? I mean, worst case scenario, you lose a couple bucks. Best case scenario, you make a couple bucks. But if you rent, no matter what, you lose.
So speaking of luxury in Florida and all these beautiful houses, this listing is amazing.
Yeah, we're at 900 Washington. We called it Noir. I'm a wine snob. It's named after Pinot Noir. So I think it's black too. It's cool. I don't know. It's a sick building. I think it looks cool.
Would you mind showing us around? Would you mind giving us a tour of the place?
I could take us a look around, yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
You gonna make me turn back, way back to the oldest me. Guarantee that you notice me. You don't want my soul for sleep. You gonna make me turn back, way back to the oldest me. Guarantee that you notice me. You don't want my soul for sleep. Can you run me like cross me? Can you run me like cross me? There was only one me you could know, and this is my only me.
Matt, I find it really interesting. I saw this report with Cranes. It was talking about last year we saw 133 luxury properties over 4 million sold, which is like 3 times the average of the last 6 years.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in the luxury market right now? I mean, are you seeing that activity continue, or is it exploding? Is it slowing down?
I mean, listen, it's not a huge surprise that the luxury market last year was really hot. You had a lot of people, a lot of money, right? Especially in the first 3 to 4 months. People were making hand over fist money at the crypto market that was like insanely hot, right? And people wanted to take that money and put it into a hard asset, especially with inflation being higher, right? So what we saw happen is we saw properties see the benefit of that. This year, you're going to see the luxury market get literally demolished. I think this year, the luxury sales are going to be at one of the lowest points we've probably seen in 3 or 4 years. I think people who had money are going to get a little bit tighter. So when the economy starts to take a little bit of a hit, people get nervous, and the rich always hold because in uncertain times they're going to hold. You don't have this digital currency stuff going crazy. You have inflation a little bit higher. You have a big talk of job market kind of closing down like we discussed earlier. So if the employer is firing a lot of their employees, if they're not top, they may also be thinking, what if I get demoted or have to take a pay cut to keep my job? So people are going to take a step back and kind of say, hey, like maybe I don't think buying a $4 million property this year is going to be the best move. Let's kind of wait it out a year. So I'm not saying you're not going to see a lot of luxury sales. I'm not going to say that like there won't be a good market for it. I just don't think it's going to be great. I think we'll have like an average to below average luxury sales here. And in fact, so far this year, you know, it's not starting off as good as a lot of people would have thought. We've had a few really high-end sales, but I don't think that's going to last past the first 3 or 4 months.
Wow. Well, you're a vast wealth of knowledge, and I beyond appreciate you walking us through this place. It's been a great
No problem, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one thing I want to leave you with.
Yeah.
We did this with a few guests, and I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
If we had a billboard in Chicago, we put it up, and it was just yours.
Yeah.
And we're not talking sales. We're not talking Matt Laricy, the realtor. If you could put a quote out in Chicago, and just with one saying, what would you have it say?
Oh man, I actually don't think I would have a quote on there.
What would you put?
I wouldn't. I would just put our name up there, and just that. That's it. Just that. Because here's the thing: people are like, what is it? I don't know what that is. Like I saw that. You know, that's it.
Fair enough.
Simple. I'm a less is more type guy.
All right. Fair enough.
Cool.
Thank you for your time,
All right, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That does it for this edition of Coffee is for Closers. I'm your host, Tim Brigham, and thank you for the coffee appointment.